Welcome to the Midwest side, those groups that the narratively driven podcast. You'll have a fun ride. I'll be in the fall. We get so fast, dice rolling for low in the swamp, never stolen, no to the Dogs of Warcry.
Dogs of Warcry is a podcast from the Mortal Realms, focusing on Warcry, a fast-paced, cinematic skirmish game by Games Workshop. Join us for discussions on gameplay, rules, lore, painting, terrain building, campaigns, and events.
Welcome to Dogs of Warcry. This episode, Season 3, Episode 8, we will be discussing Soroth Kor, the Silent City, which is the campaign in Tome of Champions 2020, and we'll share our thoughts on how it expands Warcry and the lore, the narrative of the 8 points. My name is Josh, and answering the call with me this week is Paven. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm glad to be back. This is the last episode of the season, but I think it's going to be our best episode.
I think so. It's got a lot of really good content in this campaign, all sorts of juicy tidbits.
I feel like we're also really going to hit our stride this one.
Oh, yeah. Lots of excitement here. I guess we'll hop right into the Forge of Mythraxis.
Yes, please. Josh, tell me how things have been going. What have you been working on?
I haven't been working on too much except for the Warband Challenge. I've been busy painting my models up, which is important. But I didn't have anything else exciting to share in that arena. So, Paven, please share with
tell
us.
me, how deep are you in the Warband? Are you doing them one at a time? Are you batching them out? Give me some more detail than that.
All right. I was going to wait for the Circle of Paint section, but I can do it here. I thought in this particular case, because when I started the models, I used an airbrush to kind of get the blend on the capes. So I did that all at once. And I was like, well, I did one test model, and I was really happy with how that went. So then I'm batching the rest, all the same color scheme as my test model. And so far, so good. I got all the base coats, working on some shading and highlighting next. And then I've got to do a little extra details and then the bases, in terms of what colors I'm going to use for the bases. So, but yeah, I'm excited. They're looking good. I'm satisfied with the color scheme. So
great. I think maybe I've seen one picture.
Yeah. I put my test model in the Discord, but yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll await I'll just await the final result, which I guess is coming up quick.
Yeah. Very sure. Yeah, it's coming up quickly.
All right. I will jump into my hobby progress, and I didn't have a ton of progress here. I've mostly been trying to finish my Ogroid Myrmidon, which I've been talking about, I think, this entire season.
It's a good model.
It's a great model, and I'm struggling mightily with it.
Yeah.
I think it's because I really want to do it justice. The finish line is in sight. I think I have a few more highlights on a few more textures, and then the base, which is already textured and base coated, and he's glued on there. I just need that should go really quickly. Some of the things that made it take a long time was I repainted a significant portions of the models, trying different things out. I think I am medium happy with where I ended, but I just need to stop. I'll post for feedback once it's all done, and maybe some people will have some insight why I'm not 100% happy with it. But figuring out how to make the skin interesting was, I think, tough because there's so much skin. Yeah. I eventually went 3 tones. So I have kind of a regular Caucasian skin on its underbelly and face. I have a gray skin for its back or more rough places, and then I also have a purple tint to that gray skin for its hands and feet.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. The purple made all of the other colors look better, but I don't necessarily love the purple. I think I'm really struggling in color theory hell, where I just don't know enough to know why I don't like it.
That's fair.
I think part of the problem is my palette for my Chaos Warband is very earthy. It's a lot of whites and grays and browns and tans, and got a little bit of orange for fire, and then a little bit of purple for the scions. The fire was on the fire and the purple was on the scales. Right. But fire and scales don't really exist on the Ogroid, and that's where all the color was coming from. So I had to figure out a way to get it in there. And I think without having that color, all the other things look less interesting. But white looks super interesting next to other things, but it's super boring when it's by itself or not next to a color. I don't know. Maybe somebody can tell me how color works, but those are my theories. But that should be done soon. I also finished my bit box dwarf living city test model. I did it like gold and red and green, and I don't like the colors, so it's a good test model in that I realized where I don't want to go. Also, I put it next to like current, like this is a model from like original GW.
Yeah.
It's not like the first set of plastics that are monopose. It's like the kits that came out after that had like the arms and the leg and the different arms and torsos and heads.
Okay.
And that dwarf is like really small. Like he's like tiny goblin size. And it makes like he like next to a Stormcast, he looks like a baby with a beard. And next to like just human models, like he looks, if you put him next to the smallest scion, like the initiates that don't have shoes on, he looks like, oh, that's a dwarf next to a human. But if you put him next to like the beasts, he looks, out of scale. So I know, and it's making me like get less excited about my Living City projects. I know all of the dwarves I would use were older, but they're not as old as the model I just put together. So I don't know. But it was fun to bash that model real quick.
The old GW pewter dwarves. Yeah, and they're entirely different scale.
Yeah, it's slowly like there's miniature scale inflation.
Yeah, definitely.
It's fine. Like overall, it's fine. Like I think they get more detail and the models get better, which is the most important thing. But it does make it weird when you use really old stuff. Sorry. Okay. So let me get past that digression. What else did I do? The only other thing is I just started to redo the white on some of my Scions, like repainting the other ones. It was losing the white I was like very crisp and bright, and I started to dirty it up because I have like it just the white was too much, and so I just did some Agrax Earthshade and then like highlighted on top of that, and that like kind of just made it a little more. I think it made it better. So nice. I did that on a few of them. That was really cool.
Yeah,
that's it.
Kind of a yellow tone to it. Very nice. Yeah, at least made some good progress. Yeah,
I actually don't think I made.
Go
ahead. I was saying, I don't actually think I made a lot of good progress. I just covered that up with a lot of talking.
Well, I think. Well, you finished your warband already, right? So when I compare myself to your progress so far this season, you're way ahead.
I'm being carried by my earlier efficiency.
Yes, that works. Yeah, so now I'm getting my motivation now that I've got the image in mind. So now we're full speed ahead. So that's good. All right. So let's talk about our path to glory. And unfortunately, I have not had any games yet. I still need to hold my stepson accouable and get some.
When's your Christmas present going to call in?
Right. Well, my birthday is
the
Friday.
Season is over. The season is over.
But I also had considered a couple times doing one of the challenge battles like you did with the Wild Fighters, but I haven't been able to get down and do it yet. So I'm definitely excited to hear about what you've been doing the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, sure. I did play another Wildfighter challenge battle game, and the one I really was excited to try out was the Tide of Chaos challenge battle, but I don't have that many Chaos models, so I just did a Tide of Destruction challenge battle. So instead of like never-ending the hordes of chaos coming through, it was just my entire orc army slowly filtering in.
Very nice.
So I'm going to try not to give the play-by-play here, but overall the scenario is usually it's 2-player. I did it 1-player, and you just you start in the middle of a dungeon board, like your whole war band, and then just waves and waves of like enemy wild fighters come through. And wild fighters, if you remember, are kind of like table. Their behavior is governed by a die 6 table, like whether they charge or mostly they just run forward and attack. And so, so it's supposed to start with 4 groups of 300 points on the table versus your 1,000. Mm-hmm. But I cut it down to 3 groups just to give myself more of a fighting chance, and I didn't change any of the other rules. And honestly, I would make the warbands pretty big. They almost always had more than 300 points per group. But we started with 3, and I actually arranged all of my orc collection on a shelf, and I would roll a dice to generate what group would come in when every turn, because new groups come in at every turn. And so on like a 1 or a 2, it would be it would be like the old boy models,
Yeah.
so like the green skin models. I use the rules for what are they called? Bone splitters, just a regular more boy bone splitters, because two-hand weapons are very similar. So yeah, those. And then the next group, 3 to 4, would be Ard boys, because I have like 20 Ard boys, and so you would work through the Ard boys. On a 5, you get a couple brutes. Brutes would come in, and those are big, beefy models, and they also, they're 200 points each, or a little less than that, so we'd be way over the 300 point mark. And then on a 6, I would roll on my character or hero table, which had 6 different orc heroes, from Mega Boss, Weird Knob, Ardboy Boss, 6 different heroes, and then I would roll again on the other table, and they would replace one of the fighters there. So you could get like a 500. If you rolled the Mega Boss, you get like a really, really dangerous group.
Yeah.
So that's the way I play it. It's very exciting. It was exciting for me to set it up. It felt very. I think I was like playing an analog video game. What it felt like in the end.
Right. Right.
And so the scenario is you play until all your fighters are dead, or you concede, I guess. And if you make it to 6 turns, you win, and you get to roll on an artifact table. But if you push further than that, you get to add the number of turns to a die 6, and you can get up to, I don't know, into the 20s and 30s. You get like different artifacts. I don't know how it goes.
Wow.
But yeah, so yeah, it's kind of like a never ending. This game, it went. Spoiler alert: this game took 12 turns. I was playing by myself for like 2 hours. It really slowed me down when my 2-year-old woke up, and I had him start rolling dice for me to keep it interesting. So I was like managing like both the enemies, myself, my little boy, trying not to so he wouldn't break things and stuff. But it was super fun. It was actually really good, and it was really challenging. Like you can really be strategic about it and like really punch above your weight. I think I ended up killing like 30 orcs or something over the course of that game. But you like eventually you just like run out of guys.
Yeah.
Because when they get to you, they do hit hard, and they're rolling a lot of dice against you, and there's not a lot you can do to just like that volume of attacks. So broad strokes, like the first 6 turns was like me in the center of the dungeon board. I don't know if I've said it was the dungeon board, but it was also an opportunity to play with that newly painted dungeon terrain I had.
Yeah.
It was me just scrapping it out in the middle, like orcs like streaming in from all directions. The Weird Knob came on the table early. He murked a guy, but I was able to take him off the board. Playing as orcs, they just have like a bucket of wounds. Like they're slow, which really helped me later. But like, boy, they just have like a minimum 15 wounds, like minimum toughness 4, often toughness 5. So, but yeah, I was able to, science a pretty good output. I was able to kill a lot of them. First 6 turns is mostly like me slowly losing ground, but holding it in the center. But then like around turn 6, I was like, I got to get out of here. And my boss, Krastos, was able to fight his way through as well as the wizard, the not wizard. I don't know.
Okay,
her name is Raya. Yeah, the priest of the
fire
flame or something. Fire priest. Yeah, they were able to fight their way through a couple of brutes over one of the bridges, and then like get to the other side of the bridge with like at least 10 orcs on that one side. And I was like, oh man, I have one shot, and I Gandalfed my priest onto the bridge, and she was able to take the bridge out and a bunch of orcs. Nice. And they fell to their death. And what's good about the big bridge is that it is, I think it's like 5 inches wide where it's missing. So like a 4-inch orc can't make it over, or it's like 4 inches. It's exactly so if like you have 4-inch move, you can't make it over the bridge, and so like the orcs had to go the long way. So I got another 6 turns of my of Krastos fighting like in a doorway in the corner of the board, but eventually he just gets overrun. With like, I ran out of regular boys, so I started putting arrow boys on the table, and those could, eventually were able to like sneak behind him and start pinging him for damage. And then I was just like killing like 2 orcs a turn at the doorway, but I just couldn't. They would like I'd kill 2, and then like 2 more would take their place and get some free attacks, do a little bit of damage, and eventually bring it down. But yeah, it was great. Took a long. Definitely, this challenge battle isn't like regular Warcry timed. It's way longer because it's kind of infinite until you die. 12 turns probably speaks to that.
Yeah.
And what happened? Well, I certainly rolled on the injury table, and pour one out for Saphimos, who is one of my initiates, who had already had a cracked rib and a concussion, a permanent concussion. She was killed by the Weird Knob.
Okay.
So I had to replace her, and then I got a new artifact. It's called the Fires of Xranathos, which is a big maul that's +1 strength. I got that
Awesome.
artifact. It was great.
Yeah. It sounds like it was an epic battle.
It was the best I can do under the circumstances.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. I can't imagine with 2 full war bands and all the armies coming on. Definitely having a GM or something run the hordes would be helpful. I think in that particular case.
Yeah, and the wildfighters actually aren't too bad. I did a couple of things to make things easier for myself. Is that I always had the individual battle groups have the same ornaments, so I didn't have to look it up. And
Right.
Eventually, you start to memorize the table when you're rolling the dice enough, and you can do it pretty quick.
Gotcha.
And then, if there's 20 guys on the table, just running through this maze to try to get to my one guy, I wasn't even rolling anymore. I was just moving the max distance.
Yeah.
They were getting bottlenecked anyway, because they would just be these crowds of orcs lining up in this doorway trying to get to my boss.
Take the turn. I want my turn.
Yeah. Eventually, when they got him.
Thanks for sharing that, man. That's fun.
Thanks. I also took a ton of pictures of this whole game. I don't know if I'm going to commit myself to typing the whole thing up.
Right.
But I have them. Maybe they'll be in the Discord at some point.
Awesome.
Plug for the Discord, maybe.
Excellent. Yeah, that would be fun to see at least a few of the action shots.
Oh yeah, Josh, I'll give you access at the very least.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Inspire me. Try one of those challenge battles.
Oh, it's my next section, right? It's Visions of Madness. What's coming down the pipe? We got a lot of stuff to talk about. You want to kick us off?
Yeah. No, we got lucky, and GW had his big review, and there were some leaks and things this past week. So, we're recording on the 24th of January. So, all kinds of cool stuff. First thing I'll mention is, they announced today that the pre-orders are up for the Underworld's Kagra's Ravagers. That's the Slaves to Darkness warband for Underworlds. Really cool models. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to that to use for warbands in Warcry. So that's why I thought I'd mention it. The pre-order is finally up for that. Definitely check them out and get that if you want. But the biggest news is, of course, the Warhammer preview, The Dead and the Divine, and some of the other leaks we had earlier in the week. I will start with what I saw first was, the Lumineth Realm Lords have a bunch of new models coming out. The ones we saw earlier in the week were these kangaroo-like creatures with riders. And apparently they're called Tree Runners, and they're the Huracan Wind Chargers. So this looks like that this is the faction of Lumineth that are associated with wind spirits. So the Huracan Wind Chargers are coming out. The Venari Lord Regent, which is riding some other cool-looking creature. There's also Sivareth, the Lord of the Seventh Wind, some sort of fox-type spirit with a bow. Looked amazing. And they had a teaser pic which showed several other models kind of in silhouettes, which also look like there's some Sword Masters or some other Lumineth Realm Lord models that they're going to be releasing as this next wave. Just to tie up the Realm Lords, this all ties into the new Broken Realms book, which is coming out, called Teclis, where he's going to be taking the fight to Shaiish to kind of have his discussion with Nagash about the whole magic backfiring. I can't remember the name at the moment, but
Arcanum Optimar.
Yes, thank you. So so a lot of really cool models there, and I think this will be, of course, the first opportunity we have for all these new models are released. How are they going to incorporate these into Warcry? Are we going to get cards or White Dwarf release? Or, I guess this would be some of the first examples we'll get to see of that. How about you, Paven? What kind of things drew your attention?
Well, all that stuff. All of it's really exciting. We're big fans of Age of Sigmar, the game, on this show as well. And I like all of the Games Workshop products, which I think you do as too, Josh.
Yeah.
I think the Lumina stuff, I'm shocked and surprised and very excited. It seems like they're getting another army that, it's going to be as big as the original release.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at 9 more kits or something incredible. So that's really dope. I think everything a lot of that stuff is going to be playable in Warcry when it comes out, or at some point in the future. Definitely the Swordmasters are classic unit.
Yeah.
Seeing those reimagined would be very cool, and they fit right into Warcry as being like a foot trooper. I don't know if we're going to get the giant cav in there. It seems like sometimes we do and sometimes we don't.
Right.
Like we have Gore Gruntas and Griff Chargers, but not Dracolith.
Yeah.
So maybe those guys will come in, maybe they won't. Yeah, it's just really great stuff. We have I want to talk longer about the biggest news, but maybe we'll get to that last.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that last. All right. The other thing they talked about, of course, the Daughters of Cain getting a new battle tome. So it'll be interesting to see if they add any new unit types in there, and again, whether they'll have some cards associated with that or not. And there was one model we saw earlier in the week, a Soul Blight, a Grave Lord, as they named it. Really cool looking vampire lord. That was not shown in the preview, so we don't know if it's associated with Age of Sigmar or one of these other types of releases. But a really cool vampire model. And
yeah, I think it's definitely an Age of Sigmar army.
Yeah,
because the leak was in a clam pack, like an Age of Sigmar hero.
Exactly.
Clam pack box. So it's got to be like the new battle tome, but we don't know that much about it.
Right.
And then the final thing is
final things.
Yeah, two final things.
They did preview an Underworld's warband of vampires.
Oh, very cool.
Crimson Court. 4 very cool looking vampires, which would make great additions to Warcry. Hopefully they'll give us some rules for those. If not, you can use them as, the vampires in your Legion of Nagash Warcry warband. But it would be cool to get a Soul Blight warband option. So definitely be interested to see how that works out. But yes,
there's just rules for vampire lords, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's just 2 vampire lords on foot and 1 mounted. Yeah,
so they fit in there. We'll probably, I think with all the new death stuff coming, which we'll talk to in a second, we're going to get Warcry rules for them.
Yeah.
That's a great Underworld warband. Underworld is a great resource for getting specific miniatures for Warcry and Age of Sigmar. I like to use them as just really great sculpts of models that already exist in Age of Sigmar. Usually the rules for something similar exist and you can just use them. Like maybe a couple examples where that doesn't hold is the Snarl Fangs, but you can just use them as Spider Riders. I think that works fine.
True.
I think those are all dope. Those are all very cool. Yeah, let's talk about Warhammer Quest.
Yeah, that was a huge. Well, some people suspected there was going to be Warhammer Quest, but nobody really knew what and where, whatever. But yeah, that was really exciting. Warhammer Quest Cursed City looked really, really cool. Got a nice little video teaser. They showed us 2 of the models that are in the box set. There's a website where they have several different icons kind of showing different areas of the Cursed City, and then there's a whole bunch that aren't shown yet, so they'll reveal that at some point in time. But lots of teaser art indicating what models are there. You want to tell us about the models and what you thought, Paven?
Yeah, so we got two models revealed out of this set. We got a Witch Hunter, formerly of, or Vampire Hunter, a Vampire Hunter, Jelson Darroch, formerly of Order of Azir, but too rock and roll for that order, that he got kicked out.
Right.
This model is incredibly good. He's got the classic Witch Hunter aesthetic. He's got the tall hat, he's got the leathers, he's got the stakes, he's got a ton of weapons, including a greatsword, a rifle, an underslung stake launcher, extra stakes, a hammer for the stakes, and a broadsword. This guy's great, armed to the teeth. And then opposing him is one of the, bosses from Warhammer Quest. One of the 5, I don't know, are they called the Grave Lords? What does the website say? Well, we know there's 6 heroes and overlords of Ulfenkarn, which is the Cursed City, the name of the Cursed City. And this is Gorslav the Gravekeeper. And this miniature is also phenomenal. A very Dark Souls vibe to the enemy, eerie. He has this strange bone headdress that covers the eyes. He's got fence posts sticking out of his back with skulls on them, and a giant spade glaive. So good. And I'm very excited for this game. I think this is going to be the purchase I'm working towards, meaning I'm working towards painting all the stuff I have and finishing my science project so I can buy this on launch and start painting it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And a lot of the teaser images, people have been teasing them apart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like some of the images, it looked like there's maybe some sort of dwarf mechanical type model, some sort of mage. It looked like a female knight, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy side, it looked like there were some werewolf type people, perhaps. So I'm really excited to see what models they associate with this. And of course, we don't know anything about timing for any of these materials yet. But yeah, and I certainly hope that they'd come out with rules that we could use in Warcry for them, so we don't have to tweak rules. It would be awesome if they kind of introduced that all together eventually. Or
they got to. Like the scale fits perfectly. Like the like these fit, like Warhammer Quest and Warcry fit kind of similar artistic and narrative niches in that they can explore the smaller parts of the realms. They don't have to be part of like a huge militarized force. It can be like individuals fighting battles and like in more interesting niches.
Right.
And so like, man, there's going to be so many good sculpts that are going to be perfect for a small scale skirmish game.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to, I think all of the antagonist forces, so the forces of the Cursed City, including this Gravekeeper, are going to fit into a Gravelord's army, kind of like in Silver Tower, a lot of the forces fit into Tzeentch eventually.
Right.
And so I'm really, and I think and with a new battle tone, I think that army will get specifically Warcry rules, and so I think all of that faction will fit into Warcry Warband as well. And I'm excited since I'm going to buy this box and paint it. Very, very likely, I will finally have a Death Warband as well. So I'll have all the Grand Alliance covered. Yeah, it's a very exciting project. I don't know, maybe after the season ends, we can start our Warhammer Quest podcast. We'll talk about a different teaser image every episode.
It would be really short.
Oh no, we'd make it really long. It'd be like 3 hours.
We'd
terrible ratio.
So I think, of course, a lot of people associate it with Mordheim, City of the Damned, Cursed City, it has a lot of that gothic, gritty feel. So I think people are going to be really excited about it, and I'm excited about incorporating it into, Soroth Kor type campaigns. Those models would fit wonderfully in this sort of setting too.
Oh man, that brings us to almost to our victory condition.
Almost. Yeah.
Almost. I thought it was the perfect segue, but not. We have another
not quite. So we'll take a quick jump into our Circle of Paint category, where we'll talk about our Tale of Two Warbands. And Paven, I'm going to let you go ahead first and add or talk about anything you'd like to discuss at this point.
Sure. I mean, not a ton to add. I mean, I played my one game, and I advanced my warband, got more destiny and more artifacts, and so that was cool. There's not a lot of, what is it called, Path to Glory for my warband, since things are pretty slow, at least the battles go.
Right.
My next step, and I think is continuing off an idea I had for next week, I think I'm going to pre-order the Ravengers Warhammer Underworlds Warband, the Chaos Warband, and I'm going to buy a box of Empire Flagellants just for the bits, for the flame bits primarily, and I'm going to use those to kit bash my second half of my Scions of the Flame.
Nice.
And that's going to be like kind of the finish line, I think, for this warband, at least for the short term, because I still have all those guys on sprues for my second group. So those guys need to be finished. I'm a little nervous that the Flagellant stuff will be a little low res, but hopefully it'll work out. We'll see. I'm just stretching my conversion muscles, which I don't do a ton of.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's a good opportunity to do that, especially. So it's mainly for the flame bits, you said, not the.
Yeah, there's some cool flame. There's some cool like torches. They have some books. Like
right.
the Flagellants are religious fanatics, and the Scions are also religious fanatics. So there's thematic themes between them, and hopefully like their like different holy texts can be repurposed to being like books about fire and the chaos gods. Yeah,
Definitely.
so that's kind of my plan to go with them next. I think, come up with a warband name that I think is going to stick, and I'm going to call them the Children of Light, because I think that's a weird thing to call a Chaos Warband, and it's creepy. But I think it's like there's nobody that thinks they're a bad guy, right? Especially a small religious sect. They're the ones who know what's up, and so that's why they think that like the fire causes light and light, and so they think they are the ones who not only light as in brightness, but light as in wisdom and truth and transcendence, and so that's what they think they're on. And in a sense, they're right. The Chaos Gods are one of the deepest truths of the Warhammer universe, and we've seen worlds end by their hand before, and so why wouldn't this world also end by fire? So they're certainly damned, and they're certainly bad, but they don't think of themselves that way. They think of themselves as like a congregation or a group of mystics, and they probably take in a lot of folks and have like an open kind of conversion, and and they have outreach.
There you go.
Yeah, and youth pastors and these kind of things.
Outreach.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how I view them, and so that's the name. That's the name I'm sticking with for now.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's definitely a good name, especially the association with fire and, like you said, the religious fanaticism that they have. Yeah, I think that does go well. And of course, in opposition, the Shadowborn, the Children of Shadow. Yeah,
is that a new name, or I think you've been talking about that before?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's the same name.
You haven't hemmed and hawed for 8 episodes.
No, I had that one down, fairly soon. It was the paint scheme that I struggled with. But that's going well, and I think one of the aspects I was trying to figure out next was the basing.
Mm-hmm.
I had taken one of my test model and to show Vince at the Warhammer store and just kind of get his input in terms of these color combinations look okay to somebody else. What do you think? And he, I had this overspray of magenta and blues when I did the capes on the bases. And, so I told him I still had to do the basing, and he said, "Oh, whoa! I thought that was already here. That's a really cool effect." So I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll kind of run with something like that." So the basing's kind of got this crackle, sandy texture, and under a lot of the models, like directly underneath the cape area, is this dark magenta color. Which, so the capes are kind of a magenta, blue, and purple, and then fade into a dark black for the shadow. So I think that'll work really well, is have this magenta dark colors where the capes are coming out of shadow, and then kind of have lighter tones of earthy materials in the rest of the base. So it looks like they're coming out of shadow or around them. And then so I was playing around with using a nun oil to make some kind of darker purple areas on the edges where the capes are in little tendrils, and I think that's going to look okay. It might be too subtle. I might have to go a little darker with that, but definitely happy that there's a prospect there for coloration on this in the basic scheme that I hadn't thought of initially. So
that's great. I know this might be pushing too hard, but are you going to go? What's your goal? Is it the 1,000 points warband, or are you going to go to overtime? What you going to add any heroes or mercenaries or a big monster?
Right. Well, unfortunately, I don't have any of the 2 order monsters, so yeah, definitely not a monster. So for this particular challenge, it'll just be the 1,000 point warband. So I do have additional models I can put together to expand the warband, and like Soroth Kor, it said you can even get up to 2,000 points over the course of the whole campaign. So whether I make that many yet or not, I'm not sure. But I'll definitely have 1,000 points, which will be done, and that'll be exciting. And then at least it'll be easier to, okay, now I know how to do this. I can, do some more in batches and whatnot to add to that. I hadn't really thought about what heroes, because I'm still trying to figure out how to use the warband effectively itself. But, obviously some Daughters of Cain would ally in really well. And there's a lot of other order factions that, if I needed maybe a tougher tank model, maybe I could take, one of the Cities of Sigmar heroes, a knight or something like that, or, so
Yeah.
Kind of makes it, find out what my weaknesses are and try to bring something in to help, couch that.
Does the Iron Scale have Warcry rules? I think it does.
The irons.
The Daughters of Cain. Medusae character.
Yes. That's a great question. I can't remember if the Medusa character. I know you can have the archers and the snake ladies in a warband, but yeah, I can't remember if one of them was a character or not. I'll have to check my order tome and find out. That would be cool though.
That model is dope.
Yeah,
and I think it has lots of wounds. And I think you can now buy it separately too.
Yeah, even those the Scathborn, the Harpy models. I can't remember what their actual name are. The Kinnerai, I think is. Maybe. Those are really cool, and that would give me some flying mobility too. So I don't think they have a character. Maybe they do, but that would be fun to ally into.
You can use the unit champion in a pinch.
Right.
Well, not in a pinch. They're all heroes. They're all kind of brought into the same band.
Right. But yeah, I know that Travis liked using one of the Daughters of Cain heroes quite a bit. She could give him a buff on damage. I can't remember which one he was using, but yeah, there's some definitely good Daughters of Cain heroes that would ally in well, depending on my narrative, so because they're trying to step away from Arathi, so I got to find.
And the Medusae or Melusai, whatever. They're very loyal to Marathi.
Right.
So that
exactly.
it makes it. Yeah, maybe you have a Stormcast then. Those guys are also real tough.
Yep. Or definitely. Maybe I go with one of those dark elf assassins. That would fit in too. So
that would also be cool. A lot of cool options. Can't wait to see your army, your warband, and I can't wait even less to play and have a rematch. And,
exactly. I know. Get some games in. Get some pictures. That'd be good. Well, I think at this point we'll take a brief break, and then we'll come back and tackle our victory condition.
Season 3 is here, and we're excited to bring you more Dogs of Warcry. We'll be discussing new warbands, the starter box Catacombs, our ongoing games and narrative play, and keeping you up to date on our Circle of Paint challenge. Thank you for the encouragement, and we hope you enjoy this episode of Dogs of Warcry. Please share your ideas and feedback with us as we travel the 8 points together.
Our victory condition this episode is to discuss the new Soroth Kor narrative campaign from Tome of Champions 2020. And to kick that off, Haven is going to share a bit of the narrative with us.
All right. Hey, I'm kicking it off. Okay. So this campaign and a lot of the events, most of the events and games and rules in Tome of Champions 2020 take place in a new setting called Soroth Kor, the Silent City. And to tell you a little bit about this place, it's located in the Kardeb Ash Waste, which is in the Bloodwind Spoil on the western part, closer to the Shamanic Realm Gate. And it was founded by Azorites in the Age of Myth. When you walk through it, you see a lot of Azorite architecture. You see a lot of statues about the old pantheon of Order and other gods. And after it was founded, sometime after that, secret fraternities started to spring up, and they started to do bad stuff. And this is kind of how chaos gets in, and then somehow, in some way, the city falls. And it's interesting. It seems to be in some sort of weird quasi-stasis where, like, it's obvious that it got corrupted, but it seems like the corruption didn't, like, go all the way. Like, there's like, a lot of buildings seem like they were starting to be chaosified, but the project wasn't finished. And some places of the city look like it was abandoned yesterday, even though the city is almost completely empty. And it has like this weird, eerie vibe, and nobody seems to be able to conquer it. It doesn't have the same vibe that other chaos cities have. And a lot of people had given up on it over a long time. Like they just said, people stopped bothering. But the Talon Lords of Karngard have recently taken another swing at it. And I think one person started to go, and then their kind of rivalries and maneuverings kind of took all of them to try to carve out ownership over the Silence. And so now this is part, it's called the Karngard Claim, and it is a part of the city that's been a small section of what used to be the Rich Quarter, has been taken over by regular chaos war bands. The current leader and tyrant in charge is Lord Harkoth, who is lords over Castle Blackspear. But they only have a really small section, and the atmosphere of the city is very oppressive, even to chaos. Like there's this weird eerie theme and feeling around Soroth Kor that makes it like unnerving even to the worshippers of chaos, which is usually the worst folks in town. And so there's a little bits and pieces left throughout the entire Tome of Champions. They talk about different landmarks, including the River Scourge, which runs through the middle of the city. The Heart of Silence, which is the tower at the center of the city, which holds a giant 8-pointed star in it that was erected by the worshippers of chaos. Nathal Hor, which is an industrial section of the city where all the foundries and laboratories and places of artisans were, which was actually built on top of geothermal power. So it's got a volcano under it, so you can go to like a volcano-ish area. There's also the Delve, which is
a chasm.
Yeah, it's like underneath the volcano part. If you go even deeper, if you can survive that far, it's like a pit of blackness that kind of drives people crazy. And some people, they get there and they just throw themselves in. Most people that go looking for it don't come back. But this kind of blackness, they don't know what it is, but likely, I suspect, like the intellect in charge of the Silent City is down there, which is separate from the gods. Interesting enough. So it's like a huge place, a lot of room for stories. It's got a great kind of gothic vibe to it. It's scary in that it's unknown. Like, I think we know so much about the Chaos Gods that they're less scary because we just know them so well. I'm like, oh, that one's going to change you into an eyeball mass. That one's just going to cut off your head. All horrible, but we know what's coming. You don't know what's going to come with Soroth Kor. You don't know who's in charge.
Right.
And so go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the more intriguing aspects of the narrative. We kind of had a touch on this in the Shadespire book, where they look up, in this, they're in the Nether Realm, they look up and they say, oh yeah, there are forces in the void that, that are malevolent and you need to be fearful of. And here's another case where there's something, in this void beneath the city that's from beyond, and it's, frightening because it's unknown, like you said. It's really cool.
This is definitely another nod in that direction, and they talk about the things between the realms and the void specifically kind of holding sway here. Whatever that is, we don't get a lot of detail. In the book, also, there's a short story called Silence, which goes into specifically one Spire Tyrant's journey through Soroth Kor and like what he experiences, and they use this as a way to reveal a little bit more of the history and like what happened. So the short of it is, as we discussed, it was a city of order, and it was actually a very religious city where there was a worship of many gods, and even thousands, like not just the pantheon, over thousands of gods. I think it was kind of a melting pot of different groups going on metaphysical religious journeys, trying to uncover like the truth of the world, of the mortal realms, like kind of a place of philosophy and religion and science. And so that was their path to damnation, because eventually they, on their quest to find gods, quote unquote, worthy of worship, they started with thousands and then they settled on the 4. These are the 4 chaos gods. And they eventually broke off into factions and made war upon themselves, as the chaos gods do. And so that tore the city apart. But while they were doing this, there was a blackness growing below. I think that blackness grew in power until it, I think, smothered everything. You can think like the fire of chaos being like what is destroying the city. It like eventually gets snuffed out. And that's why Soroth Kor lives in this kind of twilight of purgatorial silence.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so that's where the campaign takes place. So I don't know, Josh, you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, no, I think the story of the Silence is really interesting because it introduces us to this character called the Sage. He's apparently used to be a person and has been kept alive for a very long time. We don't really get told how long, but he alludes to the fact that he thinks the city is keeping him alive to observe and to document the passage of time and what happens in the city, and to try to warn people off but he's unsuccessful because people keep coming. But yeah, the story is really interesting because it talks about how the city hungers for souls and for people, and how the chaos gods have less power in this particular area, and that the city will change, its streets and buildings and things to mess with people, but it also change individuals into a shape that it thinks is best or for its amusement. So it's a sentient critter, the city, which is intentionally drawing people to play with or to devour, and you really aren't sure what or all. Super cool setting.
Yeah. Okay, how do we play games here, Trash?
Yes, games. So I think the campaign is a really interesting setup. And I kind of like how they've done it. Instead of having a narrative campaign where you have up to 10, 11 points along your campaign path, and you have convergences along that path. In this particular campaign, they kind of break it up into 3 phases, and then you're declaring the winner. And the way they have the phases, they essentially say, well, each phase should be roughly a month, but adjust that based on how many people you have and how often you can play. But in phase 1, your warband has arrived to this city, and you're battling in the outer parts of the city. And so for the first 3 weeks, you play as many games as you want. And then in the 4th week, or the last part of that phase, you play the Convergence Battle. And each phase has its own Convergence Battle with unique abilities that you can use. There's certain scenarios and setups. But every other game you play in the 3 weeks prior to that could be anything you want, which I think is really cool. So, and it's narrative in the sense that your warband is coming from the outside, and you're trying to capture the Heart of Silence, the center of the city. And so in phase 1, you battle for the outer city. In phase 2, you're battling in the Soroth Kor, in the western part of the city, and getting the industrial might and delving deeper. And then in phase 3, you're kind of getting to the center of the city, and you're battling for the Heart of Silence itself. And at the end of that campaign, a winner is decided, and we'll kind of touch on all of that. And then the final Convergence Battle, helps add additional points to your total to determine the overall winner. So a really neat idea where you can visually see, the warbands are moving in. It's almost like a map-based campaign, but you've got these 3 sections, but you're not really having to capture specific territories. But there are unique territories to this campaign setting. I think what's really cool is in each phase, there's certain types of territories that you can dominate. So it changes for each phase. And on top of that, you can have up to 5 territories for the first phase, up to 10 for the second phase, and up to 15 for the third phase. So, you really can play as many games as you want, dominate territories. And some other unique factors is you can upgrade your territories. And each of those upgrades will do something unique to that specific territory. In phase 1, for example, you're fighting for some generic areas, and an upgrade might give you 3 glory points right off the bat, that you get right away. Other ones kind of give you a concurrent ongoing effect for every time the game, you play a game, you get something unique. And some of the territories give you a one-time benefit of an artifact. What's interesting about this is, since you can have so many territories, when you play a game, the winner, if they win by 3 or more glory points, the difference between the winner and the loser, they can actually automatically dominate a territory. So you don't even have to have 10 glory points to dominate a territory if you win your game by 3 or more glory points. You can either take the loser's territory if they have one, or just roll on the table to get a new one. And I think that particular aspect allows you to get unique upgraded territories, or upgrade them. And if you win the game, you could steal somebody else's upgraded territory that you may not be able to get because you're in the second phase of the game. So I think that adds a lot of flexibility in terms of narrative element, where I'm fighting this warband in this part of the city, and this territory is mine now. So I definitely think that was something I wasn't expecting, and it's a really interesting twist. But I'm glad that they put a buffer in there that you have to beat them by at least 3 before you get that option.
Yeah, and if you look at the glory rules, I just double checked it. You get 2 for winning. So you have to win by 2 and do one more thing that they didn't do, kill a leader, wipe out a third or half of or 2/3 of their warband where they didn't. And so that's how you get that 3 glory point win.
Well, you have to have a difference of 3. So I mean, if the loser got 3 victory points or glory points, you would have to have 8 somehow. So that's what I think is unique, is you have to have at least a difference of 3 or more than the loser had.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't doing the math right or wasn't explaining myself out. But you get, like, the difference is already automatically 2 because you win the battle and they don't win the battle, and you get 2 for that, and then you have to do 1 more on top of that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, on top of on top of the glory points you get for just playing the game. Right, I got you.
So solid victory, I guess, is what you need.
Right. So lots of unique opportunity here. As I said, previously in this podcast, that you can, it says in the book, you can have up to 2,000 points potentially with all these dominated territories, and getting 50 points for each one. Mm-hmm. You could have some really big warbands on the table when you get to the third phase.
Yeah, if you have maximum number of territories, you're getting about 1,750. And then you can spend, that additional 300 or that additional 100, and then there's a couple of territories that give you more than 50.
Right.
Yeah. So I think you certainly can get, with some good situations, you can get up to that 2,000. Oh, I wonder how a 2,000 point game of Warcry will play. It's gonna be quite it seems super fun. It's definitely like a very crunchy and feels more like classical Warhammer campaign. Like not quite map, but there is territories and we are exchanging territories, so we don't need to like keep track of the map.
Right, and they're unique too because you can upgrade them, and then I might have the same territory as you, but yours is upgraded. I want that one instead. So it definitely adds an interesting element to maybe playing certain people to try and get that territory. Yeah,
like a geography of it for sure. And if if you're winning a lot of games, you're going to hit that 5 territory cap probably pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to talk? Are there any territories you thought were particularly cool?
There are. Let me get my book open here. In phase 2, in the Nothar Tor area, there's one of the places in the city is called the Gore Pit, and apparently there are gladiatorial arenas constructed to appease the blood hunger of the city's inhabitants. With many traps and death devices concealed within, they would make fine training grounds. So I thought it was a really neat, flavorful, and kind of tells you another place of the city that's interesting. And you can spend 5 glory points to upgrade it to training grounds, when you get to add 1 to the value of abilities used by fighters in your warbands to a maximum of 6. So a lot of really cool stuff there. The phase 3 has got some really interesting ones, but I'll let you choose an example that you enjoyed.
Yeah, so I'm going to choose Entrance to the Deep Dark.
Oh, yeah.
Flavor text is there may be secrets to discover in this Teutonic Warren of Tuttles, provided you return. And the way you upgrade this one is a little different. You don't play Glory, but you pick a fighter to send down there. And you're like, hey, jabroni, like, go check it out. And then you roll a die 6. And on 1 to 3, the attempt fails, and the fighter is immediately removed from your warband as if they were slain. So they die down there.
Yep.
And we're playing Trial of Champions for this, so they're gone. You have to buy a new one.
Right.
But on a 4+, the territory is upgraded, and you immediately receive an artifact of power. And if it gets stolen away from you after that, the winner doesn't get the artifact of power, and you can't upgrade it anymore. So there's only one down there. So that's super high risk, high reward. Yeah, go down there and look around.
50-50 chance. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was definitely very flavorful. As you alluded to, in the Aftermath sequence, a lot of it's similar to the normal Warcry game, but this campaign uses the Trial of Champions rules for everything. So in terms of, you've got 1,000, you've got to pay for any replacements, you've got to roll on the injury table, and of course you roll on the associated artifact. You don't roll on artifact tables because you only get artifacts and command traits at the Convergences. So you don't,
Or there's a couple of other ways to get artifacts, but you
still get the basic lesser artifacts. You still roll for those on the tables. But it's nice that they incorporated Trial of Champions right away. Including the new addition to those special Trial of Champion rewards, and you roll a double. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a good way of saying this campaign is only for big boys and big girls.
Right. It's a more detailed, more bookkeeping. It's got a special warband sheet that you can use to kind of keep track of your territories and everything else. So definitely a little bit more crunchy, like you said, than the standard campaign, which is cool.
For sure.
Kind of touching on that, we'll go into the convergences. So as we kind of described, this is not your typical campaign where you only have 3 convergences this entire, I think you typically have 3 or 4 anyway. But here you last week in each phase, you play a convergence game. And it's interesting because at the beginning of that week, players are ranked, by the GM or, whoever is helping kind of moderate everything. And so the 2 players with the most dominated territories will fight each other, and then it kind of goes down from that. So it's kind of everybody's matching up with the strongest warbands fight each other, which is nice. There are tiebreakers for the upgraded territories and then unspent glory. And then after all the pairing is worked out, you play your game, and then whoever wins that convergence, the reward and the command trait, artifacts, everybody gets a command trait and an artifact. Or artifact, but the winner would get the benefit, the special artifact would tied to that particular convergence.
Well, sorry to clarify. You everybody plays the same scenario, which is really cool. And these are kind of like narrative battles, and they almost always come with special battle plan abilities that have to do with where the story is. And then I think it's got a great, as you talked about, a great matchup system where the best people play against each other. So I think you're going to get the best games.
Mm-hmm.
And then the winner, so everybody, after the battle, everybody gets an artifact of power, and then the second one, everybody gets a command trait. So you're always getting stuff no matter win or lose.
Right.
But the winner gets a special territory that they get to dominate. So they automatically just get another territory right when, the new territories open up. So right after the convergence game, you get access to dominate 5 new ones. And so you get So, like, for example, on the first one, you get the Bridge over the Scourge, which, once it's upgraded, you earn an additional die 3 glory points at the start of each year of Aftermathing, which is very good.
Yep. And just to clarify, it does say the player who won this battle can dominate the following area of territory. And I was reading that as this is now an available option for you to dominate instead of rolling on the table. You don't automatically get it. I think you'd have to spend
you still got to spend the 10.
Or beat somebody by 3 and then be able to pick it, kind of thing. But I guess we'll wait and see if a fact or anything comes out.
I think you're right. I don't think they get it for free. That probably might be too much. But yeah, it's a very good one that they can dominate if they have if they already have 10 glory saved up, or they hit that 10 from that battle. Then they would have to spend it. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then it's a little bit. If you get a free one, maybe it's too much of the rich getting richer.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like a unique place that you can only get based on this particular convergence, which is cool. Yeah, it's like that one, you're controlling the bridge that crosses the river, so you get some tactical advantages that way.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing about the convergences, you don't break up your warband into the Daggerhammer Shield, but you put them in groups, 1, 2, or 3, and then based on that, when the deployment comes up, you decide where you're going to put 1, 2, or 3, and then during the course of the game, when you deploy, you reveal which group is the 1, which group is 2. So it's almost like a blind deployment scenario where it's like, okay, I know he's got 3 different groups. I don't know which ones are where yet. I don't know which one's 1, which ones are 2. So I think that's really unique and kind of a fun way to not be able to plan exactly, to oppose an opponent or their particular battle group. And they do state that you have to roll for the artifact of power and command traits. You cannot choose like you can sometimes in a
dang right. Campaign. You're dang right. Roll on that table.
That's right. Did you have any particular favorite artifact of powers or command traits you saw for those convergence battles?
I didn't. I haven't picked one out ahead of time. So if you have one, please go first.
I will do that. There's one that speaks to my particular warband called the Penumbral Familiar. On occasion, a strange shadow figure can be seen creeping along the walls after this warrior. More than one foe has been suddenly smothered by this gloom-cast apparition. Once per battle, at the end of the bearer's activation, pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of the bearer. Allocate d6 damage points to that fighter. So the thought of my Knight Shadowstalkers having a Penumbral Familiar sounded perfect. but there's some other really neat artifacts that you could potentially get. Otherworldly Eidolon, strange icon, resonates with an eerie but tangible power. The Sorrow Mask from the House of Sorrows, so again, some allusions to other areas in the city. Lots of fun stuff. The command traits are all really cool too. Like there's one that gives you the Onslaught ability without needing to use any ability dice. One that gives you Rampage ability.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good. Yeah, the one free Rampage. If you get 5 points allocated to you, that's good. I like the one that gives you the free Onslaught because it's called Creeping Derangement.
Yes.
You're just like losing it because you're going crazy in the place.
Yeah, there's another one, Guided by Whispers. Something calls to this fighter, whispering in the back of their mind. On occasion, it provides useful foreknowledge. Yeah, it's all alluding to the eerie setting that you're in. That's pretty cool. So, after you've played, your each phase, and then you get to your convergences. Before the final convergence, you kind of set up again the winners. The order based on dominated territories and play. And the particular winner of the final convergence gets 10 campaign points. So winning that last convergence is really key to winning the particular overall. Mm-hmm. But the way they kind of score the whole campaign is that each area of dominated territory gives you 3 campaign points. Apparently, the Cultic Sanctuary gives you bonuses. You get 6 campaign points for having one of those territories. Each upgraded territory will give you 1 campaign point. You get 2 for each Cultic Sanctuary. You get 10 campaign points for winning your final Convergence Battle. And also, in the final Convergence, there's an ability called Declaration to the Gods, where you can potentially, dedicate yourself or the models you're killing to the Chaos Gods. And you can get 1 or more campaign points for each model you kill in that particular part of the Convergence. And so then you kind of tally up all those campaign points. And then again, there are tiebreakers based on number of upgraded territories or unspent glory. And then you determine a winner. And before we jump into the winning section and what kind of things are there, I forgot to mention that during the Convergence games, there's an underdog rule where if there's an odd number of players, for example, the person who's has the least points overall, at least dominated territories, is considered to have automatically won and gets all the benefits thereof. So they kind of describe it as the underdog is overlooked by the other warbands and makes delves deeper into the city, so without any resistance. So it's kind of fun that way. So it's nice that they have some setups for we've got an odd number of players. How do we handle that? Okay, this is how it works. There is no underdog rule for the final convergence. You have to play a game there, and if there's an odd number of players, whoever's in last they just count up their campaign points. There's you don't win the scenario or anything like that because it's the final bit of the story, and you've got to play a game or just you didn't get far enough to have a chance to win it. So
yeah, the way I think I would run this if I was running it is to just have I would just bring an extra warband, just like a basic 1,000-point one, and just play against the person in last, so they could play the game and feel like they're participating.
Exactly.
Not being able to play sucks. You almost always, even if you get the free win.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're right because they're not going to have a chance to win overall anyway, but you still want to have a fun game. That's what it's about.
Yeah, you still want them to get to play.
Yeah.
Get to play the fun scenario.
Exactly. So they do break out. They've got essentially 3 titles and rewards for the first, second, and third most territory. The campaign points, and then everybody below that gets an artifact. So no matter what, you get an artifact that's in the city, which is kind of cool. When the first,
really?
Yeah. So the person in first gets the title Lord of the Spire because they have conquered the Heart of Silence. And they get the artifact called the Aetherfold Puzzle Cube. It's really cool. And so they kind of, you've made your way up to the top of the tower, and you find this replica of the city surrounded by scrolls and symbols. And this puzzle cube, it says, it's marked with glyphs. And it says, sitting beside the scrolls is a golden puzzle box marked with reptilian glyphs. As you twist and manipulate the cube, sections of the city model itself begin to realign. Perhaps it works outside these walls too. So you can use this to kind of change the layout of the city, which I thought was really cool. The rules there, I won't go into what each artifact does for you in game, but just kind of the narrative lore. The second place winner is called the Dark Diviner, and you find a hidden cloister and make your way inside, and it's a 12-sided room, and the artifact is called the Lurid Doedicarite. Upon an altar in the center of the chamber stands a 12-sided crystal that pulses with an inner light. As you grasp it, you feel the air itself writhe with reality warping potential. Very cool. The third person is called the Gilded Knight, and you find the key to the vault, and you get lots and lots of treasure. And fourth and below are called the Silent Masses, and the artifact you get is called the Blackshard Kriss. It is said that these daggers were once used in an effort to rend the veil of worlds. Imagine what they will do to mere flesh. Yeah, so I think it's nice that everybody gets a unique artifact. And it says in terms of continuing the story, you can either continue to fight in Soroth Kor campaigns, or you can move on to normal campaign battles and you are considered to have played a Trial of Champions campaign previously. So I think that's nice that they kind of give you different options to make your way through there.
Yeah, hella cool.
Yeah, did you have any other thoughts about
Yeah, certainly. This is what I want to do the most once we can play with lots of people in game stores.
Yes.
Is play through a Soroth Kor campaign. I think it's really laid out there. I think it would be relatively easy to run. 3 months is a bit. I don't know. I mean, you have more experience with this, but it feels a little long for a campaign to keep that going over 12 weeks.
Yeah.
But I think it's paced really well. I think shortening it at all would be tough. Maybe you could shorten it to 3 weeks around, and you just most people probably wouldn't get to the 5 dominated territories in a week.
Right.
In a phase. But yeah, it's got great narrative theme. The rules are very fun and very inclusive. I think there's going to be some people that crush. I think any campaign with consequences, that's going to be very possible. Right. Especially towards the end, I think people are going to be rolling up with 1,500 plus of warbands. It's going to be tough against folks that aren't playing as many games, but I think that's still cool. And I hope we can get one going. I think we have enough people in Madison that would want to play.
Yeah.
And I'm just excited to see what happens to Warcry Night once we can do Warcry Night again.
Yeah, definitely. And the book also has a one-page area that talks about for running, tips for running the campaign, and how to keep up interest, like doing a newsletter or introducing events to do periodically, either multiplayer events or unique events. Like maybe you could totally do a pit fighting scenario in the gore pits, right? Where maybe one day, during one of those weeks, you're fighting in the pits for extra glory, and so that 3-month period doesn't feel so long, and but I think it's nice that they give players the opportunity to play as many games as they can within the 3-week period, because people have different schedules. Maybe they can't meet up on Warcry Night, and it gives people extra time to get that 5 territories that they want, so definitely I think they set it up well, and I think it's nice that the Convergences pair up the larger warbands with each other, so that you're not getting this uneven lopsided battles as much.
Yeah,
but during the regular weeks, you could play whatever you want: catacombs, regular games, unique events.
Yeah, it's like everything I really like about Warcry. It's lots of strong narrative, exploring a uncharted piece of the mortal realms, mystery. And just a lot of fun games to play and have your own emergent narrative happen within that context.
Yeah. Reading some of the descriptions of the city and some of the other things, you can kind of get a general picture of how it's laid out, but some of it doesn't quite make sense. So one thing I would love to see is have Games Workshop put out just a generic illustration of the city, like we had for Mordheim. Just say, oh yeah, here's the city, here's where the rivers are, and then these are the general districts. And then, that way you could put it up, and during campaign night and say, okay, here's the city. Everybody's fighting in this part of the city this week, for this next 3 weeks. And then, maybe the warbands that win a certain convergence say, okay, they got this bridge, so then you add a little bit more visual imagery to the campaign as it goes along. So that would be really cool to see an image of the city, just to kind of facilitate that imagination a little bit as we're playing games.
I'm curious whether that exists or not, because in the Faded Quests, they have pictures of Soroth Kor as a little
Yes.
tiny zoomed in map.
Right.
And I don't know if like there's a master image of this that exists somewhere. I do fear, and I want to double check, that they are reusing images from the Bloodwind Spoils way zoomed in. Like, have we seen these before? I don't think so. I don't think these are Karngard, but they could be. There's also one that
some of the
is
pits on there. There's like one with the gore pits, which I don't think I've seen before. There's a couple of them have the gore pits.
Yeah, a couple of them happen underground, and
Right.
those underground ones look super familiar, but it's just squiggles on gray.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't tell if they're all the same or not. But some of them look different. Like the Grand Library, second portal, third portal. That one doesn't look like anything I saw on any Karngard.
So maybe I bet there's something that does exist, and they're just keep it's too secret. And also the city moves around on itself.
Yeah,
it rearranges
exactly.
itself, so you can't know.
Yeah, but that's where it would be nice just to see. Okay, so they say the River Scourge comes in from the east, and then it splits, goes north and south, and it bisects the eastern half of the city, the poor districts, from the west. And I was like, okay, but they also talk about the River Scourge ending in the Delve, and I was like, okay, well, how is it ending in the Delve if it's going north and south? So some of it I can't quite figure out how it's all laid out.
It's a paradox.
Right. maybe
maybe just not called the River Scourge anymore when it's split, and it's two child rivers are called.
Right. Maybe it pours into the Delve in the center and then goes north and south in different ways. Yeah, that's possible.
Who knows? Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and I think about the terrain I'm painting right now, or we're gonna paint next. Part of the stuff I got in Catacombs, and I'm like, oh, is this Soroth Kor? Am I painting that? It's purple. That's spooky.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. Yeah, but who knows? Maybe the fall. This will be our fall campaign, season 6. I love it. Tome of Champions is such a good publication. It's got so much good stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about? I don't know. I don't know if I have any more novel thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think one thing that just sprung to mind is that they mention, that you can play any types of Warcry games you want during the 3 weeks, and then for the Convergence game, they give you deployment zones and twists and things like that. But they don't tell you about terrain, so they want you to set up the terrain however you want based on your collections or what part of the city you're in. So I think that's really nice, is because you can again tie the narrative in with the location. It's like, oh, okay, we're fighting on this near the river, near the bridge. Maybe we should have a bridge. Maybe we should have a river running through it, or so you could really tailor the terrain to match the scenario a bit more. And that's kind of where I'm going with trying to build multi-level terrain that we could use in some of these Soroth Kor campaigns and other games to make it different and unique. Because you're like, oh yeah, this is a city. There's lots of buildings. It changes the dynamic a little bit more, having more vertical access, perhaps. But also having those enclosed spaces, like in the industrial sector or underground. We're playing Catacombs games in this area. That kind of stuff. Cool. Yeah. No, exciting. And like you said, really looking forward to the day when we can start playing some of these games again.
Yeah. Well, at least it'll warm up soon, and then it'll be more at least available to play more outdoor games. We can reboot those at some point.
Yeah. Maybe this is a good point to ask you is, if I got a heater for the garage, would you feel safe playing in a garage?
An open garage?
And we could have the garage door open. We'll have maybe a space heater.
Yeah, that could work.
Okay.
I'll give it a shot for sure.
Okay, all right. I'll take a look into that.
I don't know. If we play a game, we can't podcast about it. What's the point? No, I'd love to. That would be super fun. Hey, maybe once your warband's painted, we could take it for a test run.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Get our season finale game in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe we part of possibly episode 8.5 where we do our final Tale of Warbands update. We can talk about a game we played.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, I'll look at space heaters then. All right, with that, we'll move on to listener questions. So we got quite a few this week, which is nice. We'll start with a few that we've been carrying over for a couple episodes now. We're waiting to do this particular topic. So PJ Shard, Paul from the Mortal Realms, has 2 questions for us. And his first question is Soroth Kor a new blueprint for Warcry campaigns? Do you have any thoughts on that, Pathan?
No, it's something different. It's certainly the one of the greatness about the basic Warcry campaigns or the general ones is that they don't need coordination to do, so you can just play them yourself and go on your own campaign. You don't need be part of a group or a part of a team, and you can just go along your campaign tracker and tell your own story.
Right.
That's super great. Soroth Kor isn't that. It is a centrally organized, persistent campaign over X number of weeks. So it's a different something, a cool something, but it's not going to replace that basic campaign structure for most Warcry games.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a unique kind of not really map-based, area-focused campaign set in a particular location. But I do think there's plenty of opportunity to tweak that sort of campaign idea for different locations. And I guess that ties into a second question. Do you think we'll be traveling to different cities as time goes on? For me, I hope that they continue to expand the lore and the 8 points, but it would also be fun, much like the Warhammer quests where they're exploring a city, or assuming in the realm of death, but we really don't know, exploring a different location where we can continue to play Warcry. So, whether it's a different city, maybe it's a dangerous swamp, or, there's all kinds of potential opportunities to explore the lore, I think. What do you think, Pathan?
Yeah, everything you said. Explore, just explore.
Explore the lore.
Imagine explore the lore. We'll go to new cities, go to new lands. I don't know if we're gonna bust out of. I guess this isn't the question, but I'm just wanting to just guess and speculate. I don't know if we're gonna bust out of the 8 points.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think
that would be like the most interesting thing we could do next. But I don't know. I don't know I don't really have a good sense of what the future holds for Warcry.
Yeah, I don't either. So besides the new models and new armies coming out, but yeah, in terms of locations and venues, it'd be interesting to see where we're gonna go.
Yeah, I guess I will say I wouldn't want them just to remake Soroth Kor in a new city.
Right.
I would rather them try something else new and exciting. Like maybe we'll get to the end of this campaign whenever we play it, and we'll be like, yeah, I want to do the exact same thing again, just in Hammerhall.
Mm-hmm.
But I would rather than try give me something else cool to do in a place.
Yeah, but I think you could definitely. Well, actually, I'll wait and say. Darth Alex has a question. Is it easy to adapt the campaign to custom settings? And so I'll continue my comment here. I think it'd be easy to adapt this type of campaign to lots of unique locations. Maybe there's lots of floating islands in the AOS. So maybe this entire campaign takes place above the earth. We're floating in the sky. There's this ruined cities, and you have perhaps rules for taking a skyship from one island to the next, or there's the city as you move around the city a little bit. And so I definitely think you can make a custom terrain using the same campaign elements. And change your narrative that way and explore different parts of the worlds. Should be cool. I think he's also talking about perhaps rules. So I don't know. What do you think, Pathan?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the bones of this campaign is a great structure to work from. Like 3 phases, you capture territory, you all play the same convergence after each phase, and then you total up your territories, whoever wins. Mm-hmm. And you can just switch out all of the territories and the scenarios and or the artifacts and command traits to be custom to your campaign and what you want to do. And I think the balance and the bones are still really good. And then you can divert from that in any way, in any direction, and do your own thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would work well.
So yeah, I think it's really it would be pretty simple to switch out. There isn't here's how you design your own campaign. That would be even simpler. Right. But I think it's how it's structured and written. It makes it easier to swap things out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they have any present examples in the future in a White Dwarf or something too. In terms of here's a novel setting that we set up for this campaign. Kind of cool. Our next series of questions are from Kill Panic. first question is, I'd like a rundown on dangerous and deadly terrain. Are there designated pieces in the battlescapes themselves? This is
Josh,
more of
go
a-
ahead.
was more of a generic question because I think Kopanic was a little confused about what counts as deadly and dangerous terrain. But essentially, it's terrain that can cause damage when you cross it. And in the main rule book or the main box set, we have these spiked walls. You could potentially fall on them or cross them and take damage. You roll a die, and on a 1, 2, or 3, nothing happens. On a 4 or 5, you take 1 point of damage. On a 6, you take 3 points of damage. Then the Mausoleum set introduced these kind of iron fences, and those also count as dangerous terrain. And in the Catacombs box set, jumping over the lava counts as dangerous terrain. So those are the only examples of dangerous terrain I think we have currently in Warcry. But there are lots of different ways that you can introduce that. Obviously, acid pools. We played our swamp game, and the swamp, you could make that dangerous terrain and other things like that. So
yeah, it's in the basic sets of terrain. It's like anything. If you're gonna have your fighter walk over something with spikes on it, or climb over something with spikes on it, then you have to take the test.
Yep.
I think that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Not too bad.
Yep.
And again, you can easily, this game has acid pools, that counts as dangerous terrain, or this stuff is on fire, counts as dangerous terrain. So I think it's an easy rule to implement for anything that is unusual or has a hazard. All right. Kopanic's second question was, what are some opportunities for using existing pieces like rat holes and carnivorous trees? What are some ideas for homegrown deadly terrain? I guess we talked a little bit about that, but yeah, no, carnivorous trees would be awesome. I have one modeled up actually, so that would be great.
Cool.
But yeah, again, you could use swamp, you could acid pools, you could, I think you could use traps. Like in Catacombs, there's the twist that introduces traps, but you could actually have on the board and say, okay, there's this column, and if you get too close to it, it hits you with this deadly gas, or maybe you're in the mines and there's sulfur, so maybe you take damage if you're in the mines for too long in a certain area. I think there are lots of unique ways that you could definitely add dangerous terrain.
Yeah,
what about you?
and if you want to use rules, you could either make it dangerous terrain, and that's, I think, it's good if the thing is passive. Like, you have to interact with it in order for it to hurt you, like it's barbed wire or something. And if it's like a carnivorous plant, like it's active dangerous terrain, then you can use like the cursed casket rules, where anytime you end an activation within 1 inch, or end an action within 1 inch of it, you roll a die 6, and then on a 1 you take die 6 damage.
Yeah, I agree.
So that'd be really good for a demon flower.
Right.
Or
it
whatever
is. And I think Catacombs introduced a lot of those unique elements as twists too. So like the monster in the dark. Maybe you're in a cavern system with goblins, and there are squigs running rampant. So if you're by yourself for a certain period of time, you might get attacked by a squig.
Monster in the Dark. Have you played the Monster in the Dark one?
Yeah, no, you and I think played it, but you could. Oh no, I think I played it with Vint actually. Yeah. So yeah, there was. If you win the initiative, then you don't have to roll. So I think the rule needs to be tweaked a little bit. That you have to roll no matter what, because otherwise you're like, oh no, I'm going to win initiative, then I don't have to worry about it. So, our next question is from Gork's Pokin' Finger. It asks, if I wanted to introduce beginners to Warcry, would you suggest the Soroth Kor campaign for them? What do you think, Paven?
No.
Exactly.
No, it's the most complex version, and you want to warm them up with just like a regular 1,000-point game, and then take them through like regular Aftermath if they're into it, like if they're getting into the narrative. And then I wouldn't even do Trial of Champions unless they're like a very experienced gamer who would like that. Because one of the great things about Warcry that wasn't as good about like Mordheim, which we constantly talk about, is that it's very easy to get into and very simple to play, and the rules are crisp and short, and the games are fun, and like it's easy to get in a narrative game against people that and you can continue on your quest. And I think I would use just basic rules.
I agree with you. I think for a beginner, especially to any sort of skirmish games, a basic narrative regular campaign would be perfect, because then again, you win or lose, you still advance until you get to Convergences. You can still have a lot of fun with the narrative element without having to rely on, like the Soroth Kor, a specific city, specific place, and specific limited Convergences, and a lot higher points potentially overall. So I think if somebody's played a lot of more time in the past, they want to jump right into this. Okay, well maybe that's not such a bad way to go if they're familiar with complex rule systems. But I think in general, starting with the basic narrative campaign with the basic rules, and then adding trial champions later, jumping into this kind of campaign later is probably a better way to go.
I will say that I imagine there is quite an opportunity for a situation where a Soroth Kor campaign is getting started in the store, and that makes other people really interested and want to join,
right?
Even though they're new to the game. And I'm like, of course, in that situation, like invite them to play. Like, there's no reason like not to. It might not be ideal because it's a little bit more punishing and complex, but like, there's no reason to exclude anybody for their like kind of being newer at the system. Like it's still Games of Warcry, which is one of probably the simplest system that Games Workshop has.
Yeah, and you get to play any type of games you want during that period of time, so that you can introduce them gradually in terms of the types of missions and games, even though the rules are a little bit more complex. But okay, Severe Elon has several questions for us.
Oh boy.
Is this the first time where we see Convergence battles not have an assigned aspirant? And I think in this case we do have an aspirant. Well, I guess aspirant's more used for the challenge battles. But essentially we have competing forces. Just like you do in a Convergence battle, you still have competing warbands. So I think in that sense it's set up the same way. If you have any.
Well, he's specifically like in all other Convergence battles, there's somebody on the quest, and then somebody playing like the enemy, and the person on the quest is the aspirant. So I think in that he's right that this is the first time Convergence battles are like kind of neutral, because this is the first time there's a quest happening that is outside of the warband, that's happening on the campaign level rather than on the warband level.
Right. Everybody's fighting, against each other. Yeah. Right. Good point. Next question is, will we see more of these symmetrical convergences in the future? And good question. I think for this kind of campaign layout, it makes sense, especially if you're pairing strongest warbands to each other. You can certainly tweak it a little bit, like what we were doing for our Adepticon event, where the winner and the loser might have different rewards depending on how the game went, for that particular. So you could do something similar to like that, I think, where maybe the winner gets something and the loser gets something, but so the path continues, but tweaks a little bit depending on what artifact you ended up with or something like that. Next question is, what happens if a player misses Convergence Week? Do they move forward as if they were the underdog? This is a great question because it's not mentioned. So obviously Convergence Week is probably the most important week. And I think it's nice that they give you, a period of time. And I think that in any, for example, if we were running the league, we would do our best to try and make sure everybody got a game in at least during that period of time. Mm-hmm. But if they didn't, then I guess we would have to figure out how we would handle that. And I don't know right now what that would be, because at the beginning of the week, you pair everybody up and those people have to play each other. And I know I've been in lots of map campaigns where sometimes your partner just can't get in a game, so we would definitely have to come up with a rule like, okay, well, if you've done your best and the other person can't, they count as a forfeit. They've lost their game. Maybe they get this many, they played, they get this many glory points, you get this many glory points. But we'd have to come up with some sort of rule for it. But.
Yeah, the short answer is definitely it's up to the campaign master.
Yeah.
I think if you just were out of town, couldn't make it, I think you would. I would say you'd still roll on the artifact table and count that, and you would move forward in the campaign, of course. Right. But you wouldn't have access to the dominated territory like the well-intentioned but person without a partner underdog would.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I would say that's where my thinking would be at, but it's not spelled out in the book. So.
Yeah. No, but I think we definitely have to come up with a rule before the campaign started, make sure everybody was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. Everybody understands how it's going to be. If they can't make it, then you move on. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really important to make sure, like, hey, this is Convergence week. It's an important week. You have an assigned partner this week, so let us know now if you can't make it, and we will reassign somebody for them to play.
Right.
Because you don't want, like, just because one person can't come, that two people can't play, aren't able to play their game.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's again, people have all schedules that change all the time. You would try to find the most accommodating way to make sure everybody gets their games in.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and that's one of the disadvantages to this type of system is that you have to get something in on this Convergence week.
Yeah, it's you raise the bar way higher on coordination. But you get a lot for it. But it does make that part a point of possible point of failure.
Yeah, exactly. Our next question is from Berserker. What are your thoughts on the new Underworld's Crimson Court vampire models revealed, and do you like their new designs? What do you think, Paven? Have you seen them?
I like them a lot. I think they're very cool, very classic Gothic vampire. I think vampire is my favorite of the death factions, or the classical ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm into it. I'm hoping to get some of that aesthetic when I've inevitably purchased the Warhammer Quest game, Curse City. Unless the rest of the models are real stinkers, which, given what we've revealed so far, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah,
I don't think Warhammer Quests have been good. I have to admit.
Yeah, I think it gives them like a really great room to play around with new concepts and new cool designs without having to get to a full range. Yeah, my favorite of the Crimson Court Underworld's Warband is definitely. Actually, I don't know. Do they have their names on here? It's the Enforcer one, the guy with the huge mace.
Oh, he's kind of got it in front of him on the ground.
Yeah. He looks real cool.
Yeah, I like the two sword wielding, vampires, very classic Van Karsten type positions in my mind. Yeah. Very, very cool looking.
Yeah, they're all dope. Yeah, they're great. They're great.
I agree. All right, our next question from Countess Alesniat. Which of the 4 artifacts of power do you like best? Is it the Aetherfold puzzle cube, a nod to the Lament configuration, which is the cube in the Hellraiser, do you think? So I guess it's 2 questions here. So I think the puzzle cube is probably my favorite. I think that one's really cool, that it changes the layout of the city. And I do think it's a nod to the puzzle cube that's in the Hellraiser series. But, it doesn't do the same kind of things. It kind of bends reality in a sense, I guess. But that's definitely the first place I ever saw a puzzle cube like that. What do you think, Faven?
I haven't seen Hellraiser.
Oh, do you did any particular artifact that you?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Out of the 4 rewards for
I think
the campaign,
Aetherfold puzzle cube is, I think, the coolest because it's like you use it to rearrange reality, and it allows you to switch your hammer and daggers and shields positionally, and that is a mechanic we haven't seen before. I'm very curious how it would play out, and it does give it kind of breaks the game in the way that you would expect the puzzle cube to break reality. So I think that one I like is the coolest.
Yeah. I mean, the lurid dodecarite is also allows you to, as a bonus action, remove yourself from the battlefield and place them anywhere 5 inches from all enemy players. So again, it's another teleport option that we haven't really had before, which is really cool tactically too.
Yeah, there's a couple warbands that have special teleport abilities. There's a couple. You've been teleporting all over this game. What is your old warband?
The Cypher Lords.
Cypher Lords, yeah.
So that's a little different, yeah. So there's a certain range for that, but where this artifact and another one that's one of the fated quests that we talked about in our last episode, or you could just use it and you can put your model anywhere on the board, as long as it's 5 inches away from enemy models. I think that's so this is the second time we've seen an artifact that can do that. So I think that's pretty cool. Yes, teleportation in general is with the Cypher Lords is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very strong, like being able to do that, especially for like objective play.
Exactly. All right, and our last question is from Velocichaptor. Looking at the way Soroth Kor is supposed to be set up, how many players do you think it can support before getting too crazy for the Dungeon Daddy to manage? I know that in the campaign section it says at least 2 players. 3 or more would be better. but yeah, it doesn't have a max. Do you have any feelings or thoughts about that, Paven?
I don't think it has a ton of overhead.
Yeah.
I think if you tried to like keep the data centralized, I think it would be a pain. But if everybody just self-reports like how many territories they have, which is the way I'd prefer to run it, just like an honor system rather than like a source of truth. I don't think it's too bad and scales pretty well. I think you would run into like game store space if you were going to have like an event night. Like everybody were going to come to our convergences on Thursday, and then if that's like 20 people, you need like 10 small tables.
Yep.
But I think 20 is like the most. I'd be like, I think 20 is possible, and that feels like a ton of people for a Warcry campaign.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, as long as people aren't all coming on the same night, I think you could manage that pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. The system is set up where as long as you're filling out the roster sheet, with the territories and everything you have, self-reporting, then it only really matters when you get up to Convergence Week that the game master has to, okay, now I've got to list everybody, categorize them so that we can pair everybody off. But otherwise, people can keep track of things most of the way, the first 3 weeks all by themselves, and play as many games as they want. So there's not really a limitation. I think the main thing is figuring out, okay, we got odd number of players. We know how to handle that. What do you do if people can't play games? Yeah. So that, like we talked about, we just have to come up with some stuff like that ahead of time. Yeah, I think 20 would be manageable. You can probably do more, but I think in most cases you get a lot of people starting, and then people kind of peter out based on availability or other things going on. So
definitely.
Well, that's definitely a great way to wrap up this particular episode. Lots of really cool information in this campaign. I love the narrative elements of it. Yeah, so eager to try it out. Really cool. Any closing thoughts at all, Paven?
Yeah, just to wrap us up, Josh, we wrapping up the episode, wrapping up the season. How did you feel like the season went? I think it went great.
I think it went really well. I think we had our break there because we the pandemic caused quite the delay in Warcry stuff, but I think we had a lot of really interesting news and surprises. A lot of things we didn't expect this season. Getting the warband challenge for the Catacombs box, I think was a lot of fun. That we could build the two warbands and face off against each other. With a whole bunch of rule sets. I've been really enjoying that. I think tying our narrative story in like that for this particular season was a lot of fun.
I enjoyed it too. What can listeners expect next from us?
That's a great question. And I think, Paven and I think we're probably going to do a short 8.5 episode to kind of tie up our Circle of Paint challenge in terms of how we feel our warbands are, what they look like, and then we'll submit pictures and we'll get people to vote on, probably the Facebook page, Twitter, and maybe in the Discord as well, just to make sure people have an opportunity to see what they, see the models and vote if you'd like. In terms of our next season, Paven and I said we're going to kind of play that by ear to see when the new Warcry stuff is coming out. So we've got lots of new models on the way. As long as we've got content coming, we can keep putting stuff out. But we also want to make sure you all keep interested and engaged and not drag things out, especially while we can't play games. So if we can start getting some games going, then we'll definitely have more that we can share with you. So.
Yeah, it's definitely like a strategy. I don't know if it's that thoughtful, but to coincide the seasons of this show with exciting Warcry stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine the things that in my mind would kick off another season of the Dogs of Warcry was a large new Warcry release, or even a medium one, or the resumption of games. Like if we kicked off our Soroth Kor campaign, I think we probably want to get back on the mic and talk about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we don't really have a time frame. We're trying to keep it sustainable for us and our lifestyle. But if you want to check us out, if you miss our voices, we have been known to participate in the Mortal Realms story phase as well. So you might be able to check us out on there.
Mm-hmm.
As always, I'm going to get ahead of myself and plug the Discord, the mortalrealms.com/Discord. We are there. We are looking at your pictures. We are putting some of the pictures ourselves. And a couple items I want to talk about before not let myself off the hook. our Circle of Paint game from last season, from season 2. We're still up for it. We still want to play it. It becomes harder and harder to play the colder Madison, Wisconsin with, and the more pandemic is out there in the air.
Right.
But we still want to play that game just for ourselves. But we know we owe you guys a scenario and a conclusion to our Circle of Paint from season 2, which was everybody building their own terrain.
Exactly.
And we're still hoping to steal Eric away from his real life and get him to play a game of Warcry with us. But who knows when that will be? I'm not committing to a time.
Right. But when it happens, you will definitely hear about it.
Yeah. on this channel.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Yeah. Bye.
It's time to put a muzzle on this episode. If it was a good dog, support the show with a positive review on iTunes, sharing it with friends, joining us for hobby discussions at themortalrealms.com/Discord, or leave a tip at themortalrealms.com/Patreon. More content is available at themortalrealms.com and on Twitter at Dogs of Warcry.
Welcome to the Midwest side, those ruthless narratively driven podcast you'll ever turn right. I'll be installed. We get your boss dice, rolling below in the swamp, never stolen, no to the Dogs of Warcry.